Hello, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. And yes, Chad Graff of The Athletic is on the show. Everyone's been waiting for it. I've been getting DMs, people sending me mail. Like, when is Chad coming on the show to talk New England Patriots and Matt Patricia's explosive offense? What is going on, Chad? How are you?
Doing well. Excited to be headed back to Minnesota this week. Excited to get back to US Bank Stadium. Excited to see this 8-2 team that I did not expect to be 8-2. And, dive a little bit deeper into the numbers this week of, is this real? Is it not real? How good are they? The NFC isn't very good. So is there a chance they could kind of get on a run and make something happen? It's been crazy to watch from afar. And now I'm super excited to watch them in person.
So I think that, did you happen to see what happened with Iowa and Minnesota the other day? Where it was 13-10. Like, I think that's what we might be looking at here for this game. I mean, the Vikings without Christian Darrisaw, the Patriots have a good defense. But since I started by making fun of the Patriots offense, I think that's where we kind of have to begin here. When we did this, when you took the job, I was like, Chad, you've covered some Matt Patricia football games. I mean, what? And no one has regressed harder than Mac Jones. What is going on? I mean, so the Patriots have a winning record, and I follow you, of course, on Twitter. You're not muted, and I see your tweets, and every one of them is like, this team is last in this. They're atrocious in that. This game is making me want to jump off of a high building. Like, every tweet is like that. And then I'm like, oh, that they won on a punt return. Like, what is happening?
It's incredible. Like, if you look at the numbers, defense, first, second, second, every stat. The offense, 27, 28, 30, 27, 26, 30. Mac Jones has taken such a step backward. It is crazy. Maybe that was always to be expected with Matt Patricia, but even in training camp and before that, I just thought Bill Belichick's not going to let it get that far south. Like, yes, he'll give Matt Patricia a chance. And there have been plenty of coaches who have switched sides and it's worked out. It can't be that bad, right? It's been that bad. Mac Jones has taken that far of a step back. The offensive line is terrible, allows tons of pressures, allows tons of sacks. The running game is working to a degree, but that's also just because Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Harris are good enough that they get hit at the line of scrimmage, much like Dalvin Cook, and are able to turn it into decent plays. They have no wide receivers. They spend more than anybody in their wide receivers and tight ends. And it's a group of Nelson Aguilar and Devontae Parker and just a bunch of guys. Nobody's that good, but it's a bunch of like number 3 wide receivers. If you could have 5 KJ Osbornes, that's what the Patriots have. So it's really not impressive anywhere. And then on top of all that, Mac Jones gets hurt in the third game, kind of tries to play through it at some point. It doesn't go well. He's just, I do actually feel bad for him. He's gone from Josh McDaniels, who turns out probably isn't a very good head coach, but as a coordinator, the guy can coach. He had Mac Jones as the best rookie quarterback in the class last year, better than Fields, better than Lawrence, obviously better than Zach Wilson, as we have seen. But he's gone from that to Mac Jones ranks near the bottom of basically every category. I don't think it's any one thing. The receivers stink, the line stinks, but the play calling is atrocious. The play design is bad. When you watch them, they've usually got like 3 wide receivers within a 5-yard bunch. And it's like he'll throw some passes where you don't even know who the target was because there were 3 guys in the vicinity. It's just bad all around.
I don't understand. I mean, this seemed like from the very second it happened, a shocking Belichick blunder. Like, this is not, I mean, we know that his coaches are weirdos and bullies, and that's why they don't do very well otherwise. But like, normally they're good at their coordinator positions. Go back to like Ted Cottrell and, or was it? No, is that it? Who was?
Romeo Crennel, Charlie Weiss.
Yeah. Romeo Crennel was the guy I was thinking of. Charlie Weiss. I mean, those guys would all get opportunities to be head coaches somewhere, and then they would blow it and whatever else. Eric Mangenius,
yeah,
you remember that? But you thought, okay, well, he's got to have a better plan to replace McDaniels, and now you have this atrocity of an offensive system that looks like it was designed on the back of a napkin by someone who's a defensive guy. I guess I just don't get it. And Mac Jones must be beside himself, right? Like, he must be so frustrated because last year he was throwing to open guys all the time and the personnel wasn't like wildly different.
Same personnel, and they've just gone away from what worked with him. Like, he's a very good play action quarterback. They ran a lot of RPOs, something he did a ton of at Alabama. And then this year they were just like, no, we're good. Just drop back and see what you find. And what he's finding is nothing, because the schemes aren't good. The receivers don't have spacing. The receivers aren't good to begin with. So it's been a complete mess. It's been what you would have expected as a Vikings fan from watching Matt Patricia for a few years in Detroit. It's been kind of exactly what you would have expected, which in a weird way is what's shocking, that Belichick has let it get to this point. Early on, I was kind of willing to give him the benefit of the doubt just because he's earned it. And I thought, well, he knows Patricia more than the rest of us. If he thinks he can coach offense, maybe he can coach offense. He was an offensive lineman. He coached offensive line for a little bit, very, very briefly. Maybe this is going to work. It hasn't. It turns out that the eye test of watching the Lions trumps whatever offensive line history he had. So it's been a mess. And yet the defense has been so good, and the special teams, which Belichick cares so deeply about, they practice so much more than everybody else. They have specialists, which I'm just not used to after covering the Vikings. Like, remember Dan Chisna and turning him into a special team specialist? They have like 4 or 5 of those every year on the roster here. That's how much he cares about special teams. And so in his eyes, they're just going to play awesome defense, which they have so far, and then have the special teams, pick up an extra 3 yards on punt return, pick up an extra 3 yards on punt coverage, and try to win the field position until they can eventually field goal you to death, because they also have the second worst red zone offense in the league.
Other than that, though, everything's going totally fine. I don't see any problems. But here's what I guess am sort of confused by, and you can clear this up. I did watch Bailey Zappi have a couple of good games. Like, was that a thing, or was that just like, who knows? Or was he actually like better at running this offense? Now, I remember looking at this. They were running play actions all the time for Bailey Zappi, but they don't want to do it for Mac Jones. I'm just confused.
I'm confused as well, as the short answer. When they brought him in, they were like, hey, this is a rookie. Let's do the things that make life easier on a quarterback. And guess what? It worked. It worked all the way up until the second half of the Bears game. And then he reverted back to being the rookie that everybody expected. He took way too many chances, and it showed. And then the job went directly back to Mac Jones. But it was just so eye-opening of, why won't you do these easy throws, give these layups basically to the guy who had a ton of success with them a year ago? Why are you changing that? Just at this point, they still don't run a ton of play action. When they do, it works. It's just a confounding offense that is super frustrating to watch.
Yeah, I think this is, what the Vikings defense needs after giving up 40 points to a well-oiled Dallas Cowboys machine that's been together, has a great quarterback, has great weapons, and this is the complete opposite of that. However, you mentioned the running game, and it doesn't sound like Delvin Tomlinson's going to be ready to go, and if he is, he won't be at 100%. I think that if there's one weakness here, it's that New England could run over them, but it also sounds like the offensive line is banged up as well.
The offensive line is a little bit banged up, couple of guys missing there. But one of the things I was looking at as I was just kind of trying to do my homework on this Vikings team and refamiliarize myself with them, they play with 6 men in the box or fewer, more than anybody in the league. They'll happily play with light boxes. We know how much, this scheme with Brian Asamoah getting drafted likes those speedy, light linebackers to basically say, go ahead, run it on us for a 10-play drive. We're convinced that somewhere along the line, you're going to stub your toe, move backward. It's not going to work. The Patriots are one of a handful of teams, with maybe the Browns and the Ravens, that are like, fine, you want to take the ball and make us run it? Like, great. We don't have to have Mac Jones throwing to Nelson Aguilar. Like, yes, please. We'll give it to Ramondre Stevenson 20 times and Damian Harris 20 times. So surprisingly, and I can't believe I'm saying this after watching the Patriots score 3 offensive points last week, I think they could actually win this game in Minnesota by dominating time of possession, just slow, methodical, boring drives, draining the play clock, running it 4 yards an attempt. playing good defense and trying to win an ugly like 14-13 game.
It kind of reminds me of the Browns game from last year. You mentioned the Browns where they won 14-7 and Baker Mayfield overthrew Odell Beckham about 6 times, which would have been easy game-winning touchdown or game-sealing touchdowns. And, maybe at that point we should have known that Baker Mayfield wasn't going to be the guy. But I think that is very plausible. Without Dalvin Tomlinson, they're just a different team. And what Dallas did, I thought was brilliant. They brought in 2 tight ends and they just loaded up on big people and said, bring in James Lynch. You remember James Lynch, Chad? Bring in James Lynch. Go ahead. Try to stop us with James Lynch, because they will put the 5 defensive linemen rather than an extra linebacker. And it's just a problem. Now, you mentioned that the defense and offense couldn't be any farther apart. I mean, is this just sort of like classic Belichick stuff? Because I knew Matthew Judon was good for them, but they always have some dude who has like 10 sacks and you're like, really? That guy has that many sacks? And he's that guy.
For a normal Vikings fan, I bet you could name probably just one. I'm trying to think of how many defensive players, probably 2 with Devin McCourty. You'd probably get McCourty and Judon. And outside of that, like, it's a bunch of misfit guys who were drafted in the middle rounds. It was a cornerback group that people were super concerned about, saying, who the heck is going to play cornerback for this team? Now they're the best pass defense in the league. They regularly play with 3 safeties as a way to both try to load up in the box with somebody bigger like Jabril Peppers coming up to try to stop the run, but also still be good in pass defense. It's just incredible what he's done. Obviously, the Super Bowl speak for themselves and the success speaks for itself. The way that he has taken this defense with Dietrich Wise and Lawrence Guy and Godshaw and Bentley, like it's a cast of players who you would not normally think of on a number 1 defense. And he's got them truly playing as the best defense in the NFL. Now, big caveat is they benefit statistically. Their last 3 games were against Zach Wilson, Sam Ehlinger, and Zach Wilson. So sure, the stats are awesome. I am curious to see if this is a great defense as they've played, or if it's just a good defense that's benefited from playing some really bad offenses.
The thing about what happened against Dallas that should be concerning to everybody is that Justin Jefferson only had 3 catches, and that was because Kirk Cousins was getting sacked constantly. And when I look at this team in New England, there's a lot of pressure on quarterbacks. That does come, I'm sure, from Zach Wilson bringing on himself because he's awful. But Kirk Cousins does that too. And they're without Christian Darrisaw. That's going to be a huge L. It seems to me like it kind of starts there with their pressure that maybe allows the cornerbacks to do their job. But the Jefferson matchup is just always pretty much the definitive thing for whether the Vikings can move the football against an opposing team or not.
And obviously, one of the ways that Belichick has separated himself is he is so good at taking away an opponent's best weapon. Like, think back to that clip of him going up to Chad Ochocinco before a Bengals game and just saying, hey, you can take the day off. I got a coverage. You're not going to touch the ball today. We're always going to have someone over you. And sure enough, he doesn't. So he's very good at that. But one thing that I don't think I realized is I was looking at the pressures today because I thought Matthew Judon and Dietrich Wise, the 2 edge rushers for the Patriots, who I think could have a big day given Christian Darrisaw is not going to play. I assumed that they would be the best pass rushing duo in the NFL just based on how good they are. The Vikings with Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith have the only duo that's been better. And that is one spot where I was so wrong about the Vikings in the offseason. I said over and over, this roster has not changed. People are way overestimating Zadarius Smith. He's always hurt. He's getting older. He's not very good. Oh my God, he has been incredible.
He's a monster. Yes, he is an absolute beast. But I thought, when we talk about how the Vikings went 8-2, which I would love your outside opinion of, like, it is sort of like going back to your hometown. And you're like, oh, wow, they built a Walmart or whatever. Like, they're like, oh, 8-2, excuse me. Like that, you would have guessed what their point differential is right in the middle of almost 0, but you would not have guessed necessarily the record. A major part of that is, like, what if I told you 30 for 30 music that Zadarius Smith did play like 2019? Like, that's every sort of fan offseason question. Hey, what if he plays like 2019? And all of us go, well, maybe. but probably not, but he has. And then Patrick Peterson, it's been like 2016 again. I mean, the guy has just been absolutely phenomenal. And that's the thing with this game is that I think there's a reason to pick the Patriots because of how the Vikings just looked and not having Darisaw, the weakness. But the one thing is that the Vikings will take the ball away. And I think that Mac Jones, if he starts to press at all, like they will catch it. Unlike some other teams where it just bounces off like they have Harrison Smith and they have Patrick Peterson. These guys will catch the football. But there's something else that I should mention for everybody that Kevin O'Connell said today is that Andrew Booth Jr. might not even be healthy for this game. The Vikings might be down to their fourth corner in Duke Shelley, who just came off the practice squad and joined the team. So there is the major injury element to this, but I just think it's interesting to get like your perspective on the 8-2 team when that was probably not what you had as your expectation when you left to bandwagon the Patriots.
Definitely not the expectation that I had. And yet at the end of every Sunday, like it's often hard to watch the other game, which, is kind of one of the downfalls. And as my buddies give me crap for being horrible fantasy every year, like I see one team, I don't get to see the rest of the league. And so I would check the score of the Vikings because I was still interested, or I'd see the tweets of the number of Vikings reporters that I still follow. And I was curious. I wanted to see what Kevin O'Connell was going to do because I was super impressed through the offseason. But it's one thing to be impressive in OTAs as a coach and a whole nother on the sideline. And as it started to roll, I kept thinking, like, this is exactly what they need. They just needed to be better in tight situations, one-score games. This is perfect. 4-1, 5-1. God, he's so good at this. And then as it starts to creep up, 6-1, 7-1, 8-1, that's when you start to think, okay, maybe this isn't quite so sustainable. Like, I appreciate that there is a difference, and having a better culture and having better game management can help you in those one-score games that the Vikings have been in so many times over the last 3 years. But at a certain point, it goes beyond, hey, we're 4-0 in those. That's really good and a nice turnaround to, hey, we're 7-0 in those. We're 8-0 in those. Now we're talking about unsustainable territory. So it's been fun to watch. I think this week's been fun to dive into the stats and learn a few things, including we covered over the last 5 years a number of atrocious interior offensive lines. At least based on the stats I've seen, this one might be worse. Ed Ingram has been horrible. Ezra Cleveland, I thought he was going to be good. His numbers are terrible. Third most pressures allowed. Garrett Bradbury's up there with the most pressures allowed among centers. That is an area I thought they would be better just because if you're going to draft a day 2 guard, I thought Ezra Cleveland was good. I didn't really think that Garrett Bradbury was going to take a step, but maybe you could mitigate that by having better guards next to him. What is going on there? How have they been that bad?
Well, I think that when you draft a second-round guard, you feel very obligated to start him right away. And actually, his training camp was pretty good, and his first couple of weeks were pretty good. But I think there was a point where he got smacked in the mouth really badly in a couple of games, and the confidence has just gone away. But I also think, and this is what we're going to see, I'm sure, from Belichick, once opposing teams saw it on tape, like, oh, he can't recognize a stunt or a twist, or like, oh, if you put someone right over him to pass rush, like he's going to lose that rep. Once the blood was in the water, they just started attacking him over and over and over again. And I think that's what we've seen the last few weeks. Ezra Cleveland is like a home run hitter that one week will have a great game. You're like, wow, he was throwing bodies. And then the next game, just who knows? And he gives up 7 pressures or something like that. I think right now, Tom Compton or Dakota Dozier could come through that door and put together better play than they have. And that's why any game down the rest of the stretch, we really have to talk about, no matter if it's Indianapolis or New England or the Jets or like all the teams that they're going to play that maybe aren't that impressive. You have to talk about like, well, they could kind of blow you up at any time with a nice little strip sack or something in the first, like at any time. And this is the challenge to Kevin O'Connell, where we're really going to find out, because this is a lot to work around, and lesser men have failed badly. And maybe better men like Gary have even struggled with this. So, Kevin, you're great, but you're no Gary Kubiak. Most of us aren't. But this was even a Gary thing too. Like when they didn't have guard play, it was just Kirk Cousins was not able to make up for that. And there was nothing he could do the other night with the pressure they put on. So I think that we're going to see that exact same model week in and week out of those guys getting attacked.
Well, and the other thing that I was curious about as I looked through all the numbers this week and was just, curious beyond glancing at the box score is I was shocked to see, given that they're 8-2, how bad Kirk Cousins' numbers are. Near the bottom in, probably around 23, 24 in most quarterback statistics, which is not where Kirk Cousins has ever resided. Like maybe he's never been 7, 8 or something, but he's always, you could pretty reliably say, somewhere between 9, 15, 16. I never thought this early in his career I would see him as the 27th best quarterback in EPA or 26 or whatever it is in QBR, like just consistently down there. And I think definitely deserves some credit for being better in the fourth quarter and having more end of game moments, which is what I've seen just watching highlights and stuff, which is why I was so surprised to see the numbers that I do see now. And the other thing is I just had so much faith in Kevin O'Connell after watching him operate this offseason and watching what he did with Matthew Stafford, that I thought this is a no-brainer. Like if anybody can get Kirk Cousins to be the 8th best quarterback in the league, it's this guy. And yet I'm just kind of amazed and shocked as I look at the numbers that it's gone the other way. And I don't know exactly how to balance it. Like on the one hand, he's winning, and that's, I've knocked on him plenty for propping up that he was the 12th best quarterback while losing a lot of games. So maybe you just tip your cap and say, congrats on being 8-2 despite these numbers, or maybe it's, an underlying hint that it's not sustainable. I don't know, but it's just been weird to see his numbers there because I thought his floor was so much higher.
I mean, we could do a lot more content on all of his numbers for sure, but the best way I could put it is that every time a team had a chance to kind of put them away, he came up with a big throw to Justin Jefferson. And that's really how it's gone all season long, is that Jefferson has just been there for him. I mean, Buffalo is the best example. That game is over if he does not make a catch on 4th and 18 that he plucked away from another man. I mean, it's been a lot of very inconsistent play, but it's almost like every week is a Kirk Cousins season where there's drives where you go, wow, oh my gosh. And then there are long sections of time where I just don't know that the offense and how O'Connell wants to play is really quite suited for him or for this offensive line. And I think it's shown up, and the turnovers that they've caused on defense, Dalvin Cook's huge runs have really kind of painted over it to some extent in some of these games. But as they go down the stretch, you just can't rely on game-winning drives every single week from Kirk Cousins. So they really have to play better than they did in the first half of the season, and they're doing it, well, a little banged up. So how they navigate that will say a lot, I think, about Kevin O'Connell. But hey, this is an inside joke. If you were worried that Dalvin Cook was going to line up in the slot a lot, he hasn't at all. Ever.
Well, thank goodness the rest of the league didn't catch on to that super popular trend that we hid through training camp. So I'll have to relay that on to Bill Belichick.
Okay. Well, I promised that I would keep you short because you got to run to the locker room. So just real quick, what is the number one difference between covering the New England Patriots and the Minnesota Vikings after you are now a half a season in to being a Patriot reporter?
What was, and then I guess this is more trivia for you, the buzzword of the offseason around the Vikings, starting with a C, that as we talked about Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah and this new culture, what were we talking about?
You mean with the call? I thought the answer was going to be, not communication. What was it? Collaboration.
That is the number one difference. There's no collaboration here. It is Bill Belichick, from the minor things to the major things. Everything runs through his desk. It's a one-man show. Here's what we're doing. I don't need to explain why we're doing this. These are the decisions I make. This is where we're practicing. Everything is through him, about him. From draft stuff to practice schedule to travel schedule to what hotel we're going to stay in. It's been eye-opening to see how he's operated and how singularly focused this organization is around him. Obviously that has come with lots of success. And so, I don't point it out to rip it or knock it. It's just been so different compared to what the Vikings have right now with Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell.
The press conferences, though, are fine, right? I've always heard that it's like overrated, though. A couple of clips made it seem different than it really is.
Totally fine. He's completely normal. If you ask him who the starting quarterback is going to be, or if the injured whatever position is going to play, yeah, that's when you're going to get kind of the funny clips that circulate through social media. The rest of it, it's not that much different from Mike Zimmer.
Chad Graff, The Athletic. I am excited for us to hang at a football game again on Thursday, so that will be great. And I wish you the best of travel making your way back up here, and we don't have to use promo code DEAD again. That's another inside joke. I'm sorry for that, but you know what it means, Chad. And we will we'll look forward to this because it should be. I mean, this could be sort of rock'em sock'em, sort of old school kind of game. So it will be fascinating to cover. So I'm glad we could get together and do this again, man.
This is perfect. Bring your neck rolls for this game, and I'll enjoy having some turkey with you beforehand.
All right. Thanks again, Chad.
Thanks.